Good morning. Welcome to our first installment of the Facebook mini-series for homeschool support. I am Miss Jess, and I am going to just talk a little bit about the mini-series today and about myself and about homeschooling in general. So first of all, I'm Jess. I am a homeschool parent. My son is 7 and we just started second grade. We have been homeschooling, doing traditional homeschool, as in making our own curriculum with different bits and pieces from preschool to now. I also was homeschooled myself from second grade on, so I'm very familiar with the process and what schedules can look like, evaluations, all that good stuff. I did traditional homeschooling up until high school, and then I used a system called Penn Foster. And at the time, because I'm old, it was mailing things back and forth rather than being online. But it would have been, at the time, it would have been the equivalent of kind of like similar to a cyber school, except a little bit less one-on-one time, I guess. So not quite the same. Let's see, I also lead a homeschool group. We affectionately call it Forest School. Now, there is a real Forest School association, and you can train to be a Forest School leader, which I have not done. I am interested in doing that. It's just not something I've pursued at this time. Our Forest School, what we do is we meet weekly outside every season, all weather, that's safe. And we learn about nature, we learn about animals, and we do different nature and science based activities. We do art activities. It's kind of like a whole STEAM sort of thing, but we do it outside with other homeschoolers. And we also have been a part of various co ops, things of that nature. So I am very familiar with the homeschool community. So that made me want to reach out to everybody. I know this is a very difficult time. Many of you are finding yourselves in a position where you're doing something that you never imagined doing, which is home education. And that's takes a few different shapes. So I just want to acknowledge that homeschooling is education at home, right? That's kind of like the basic definition. But there is some varieties to that. And I think it's important to acknowledge those varieties, because it's not to say that any of them is harder or easier, but they are all very different. And they all have very unique struggles. And I think it's important to honor that, to respect that, because it says something about what your family is going through, right? So throughout this mini-series, I'm going to be referring to traditional homeschooling, which is where you're either going to be purchasing a curriculum, perhaps designing your own curriculum, or if you're going under that same umbrella, if you're going the unschooling route, you're not really going to be using a definite curriculum at all. I'm also going to be referring to cyberschooling. Cyberschooling is going to be your online charter school. So this is a form of public school, but it is online. But these are pre-existing programs. So like CCA, 21st Century, Agora, PA Charter, I think is another one. And then there's virtual public school, and that's where many of you are finding yourselves now because of the pandemic. Occasionally, there are some school districts, I believe Wilson is one, where they did have a pre-existing program available, but not in the robust way of kind of imagining at least 50% of the school student body going. So this is going to be an online public school due to the pandemic, and that might be hybrid schooling for some of you. Likely it was designed specifically over this summer to help deal with the situation that we find ourselves in. And again, I just want to acknowledge the fact that each of these, while they are all education at home, they are all very different. And so the information that you're going to be getting from whether it's me or other sources, it's going to depend on where you fall in those categories, whether or not it's going to be useful. I am more familiar with traditional homeschooling, but I'm going to try my best to offer some tips and tricks that will be relevant to all of those different categories, whether it's traditional, cyber school, or virtual public school. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about is that I am not personally going to comment or advise anything regarding Pennsylvania homeschool law. That is not, I welcome any and all questions, but please know that I am limited in that way. I cannot advise anybody regarding that. What I can do is recommend that if you do have questions, to go to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. That's hslda.org. Great website. It is nationwide, but they break everything down by state, and so you can find Pennsylvania homeschool law on there, a little with some FAQ sections and things like that. They also do offer legal assistance, and they do this based on a monthly membership. It begins at $12 a month, but there are other options such as annual fees and lifetime memberships. They also offer through the hslda.org Mom Possible. Okay, so Mom Possible is an extension website. It again offers a lot of really helpful advice to moms that are finding them, or parents in general, that again they're finding themselves in a position that they are very unfamiliar with and possibly kind of being forced into. This wasn't a decision they were thinking they were going to make, but because of the pandemic, here we are. So the Mom Possible extension has a lot of helpful tools, and they also, as part of that, offer a Facebook group that has a mentor program. And so they will link you with an experienced homeschool mom to mentor you through the homeschooling process, which I think is such a valuable tool. If you can find somebody in your community that can help you with that too, locally, there are some other local Facebook groups like the Berks County Homeschool Association and things like that. Great. The homeschool community is there for you. They want to help you. They want to support you. They want to answer any questions they possibly can. We are all in this together. Don't feel alone. Don't feel overwhelmed, although it is kind of it's an overwhelming situation that you may be finding yourself in. But there is help out there. So take advantage of that. Don't isolate yourself in this time. Even if that means you're not isolated, you might have to isolate physically because of physical distancing. There's many virtual options out there where you can get a lot of helpful support, okay? So don't close yourself off to that. Go out, find it, because it definitely exists. The other thing I want to mention is, of course, the library. The library is such a helpful tool right now for those who are educating at home, regardless of what category you fall into as far as traditional, cyber, or virtual public school. Use the library to the full. If you don't have a card, get one. If your kids don't have a card, get them a card. From your littlest child, get them a library card. Start using it. Get the books you need, the DVDs you need, the Blu-rays you need, the video games you need, documentaries, and there's just so much. I'm going to, in another episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we even have materials specifically designed as learning tools that are going to be such a help for those with younger kids. Please take advantage of this. That's what we are here for, right? The library system, we want to give you access to literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of materials for free. So take advantage of that. The library system, the Berks County Library System, also just started this fall a quarterly newsletter for educators. That includes the school system, it includes homeschoolers, it includes you parents that are taking advantage of the virtual public school system right now because of the pandemic. And just to give you an idea, I'm going to post a link to that newsletter so that you have access to it. But it talks a little bit about digital resources that you want to take advantage of, such as Overdrive and Libby, Bookflix, and TrueFlix. It also has different ideas of how to make the most out of those free resources. They are going to be hosting a Drinks and Databases Power Library Informative Introduction virtual training on October 8th. It also is going to talk about Reading Olympics going virtual, which may be very relevant to many of you that are in the local school systems. So I will link that. Keep an eye out for it. We have been posting it too on the Berks County Homeschool Association Facebook group page, things of that nature. So, and I will continue to post it as new ones come out. The idea is that that will be quarterly. So definitely, again, another great resource. It's going to help give you pointers and tips and tricks of how to make the most out of your library card, these free resources to support your home education program. I just wanted to say you're doing amazing. You're doing great. It is hard. These are unprecedented times. Even though we've had a pandemic before. If you think back to the Spanish flu, but not like this. Not like this because right in this time, in this moment in history, most families have two working parents. Most families are struggling to find childcare outside of school hours. Most families are in such a difficult position where before, maybe in the early 1900s, for sure it was still hard, but home education may have been a little bit easily stepped into on the fly, not in 2020, right? So my heart goes out to you for you parents that are struggling right now. This is a difficult time, but you really are doing amazing. And the fact that you're watching this, that tells me that you're looking for ways to enhance this process to make it easier for you to benefit your child. And that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I know that you can do it. It won't be the ideal year. It's not going to for any of us, not for us that are used to traditionally homeschooling either. We are missing people. We're missing our large groups of people that we typically get to be with. We're missing not wearing a mask. There's things about this that it is affecting every single one of us. So for sure, I think we need to just have a lot of compassion for one another and to be optimistic that this is a period of time that we can get through. While you are struggling, I just have a couple things as little tiny pieces of advice that I have found to be true over the last few years, and even as I was a homeschooler, be the one being taught, a student. Be flexible. This is not public school. For those of you that have a schedule through cyber school or you have a schedule through your virtual school, that is one thing. You have to stick to that schedule. For those of you that may be embarking on traditional homeschooling for the first time, be flexible. For my son and I, there are weeks where our schedule stays the same and then there's a hiccup, and then for a few weeks we have a rough period of time and we take it a little bit easier, and that's okay. There's flexibility there. Take advantage of that, especially right now when you may be struggling with, unusual amounts of stress or anxiety. Yeah, that's all right. Be easy on yourself. Be optimistic. Get outside. That's probably one of my top biggest pieces of advice that I could possibly give anybody right now. Be outside. We are all zoomed out, man. It's just a lot of screen time, regardless of what your schooling process is right now. A lot of screen time. A lot of whether you might even be on top of Zoom for school or meetings, work, and all of that as a family. Maybe you've been using it for your association, for being able to hang out with people over Zoom rather than in person. And then maybe you've been coping by watching TV and movies, and hey, I've been doing it too. It's okay. I'm going through like my third time watching Star Trek. That's how I've been coping. But get outside, get away from screens. No matter what the weather is today, it seems kind of gross outside. Go find some puddles to jump in. Go and find spider webs that have beautiful, intricate designs, and they're going to be enhanced by the fact that there's raindrops on them. Get outside and focus on nature. That is going to be such a huge resource for you, just to be calming and refreshing away from technology. So, with all that being said, this is the first one, so I just kind of wanted to cover a broad range, a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. As I mentioned, I'll be focusing on ways that you can use the library and the virtual tools that we have to get the most out of homeschooling, especially on a budget. Again, it's a free resource, and I want you to get the most out of it. And so I'm going to show different tips of how to do that. I can answer any questions that you have. Please ask questions. I am open to any and all questions. Now, you can do that either by commenting on this video. That's fine. You can also email me. My email is jessconnot87@hotmail.com, and I'll include that in this post as well. Email me any questions. I'll either answer them directly or perhaps address them on a mini series, in the mini series, in a future episode. So I want to answer questions. I want to talk about a little bit more about what our schedule is kind of like and what other people's schedules are like, and how it's okay for those differences to be there. Each family is going to be unique in how to make homeschooling work for you. And just ways that you can integrate learning into your lifestyle rather than it being very black and white. You learn at school and then you don't learn at home. That's one of the great things about homeschooling, is learning how to integrate school into everyday life, doing sneaky learning where you don't even realize that you're learning by cooking and baking and all of that good stuff. And I also have, I think for each episode, basically, I'll give you a couple book recommendations. So I'll do that now. So I have 2 books that I'm going to focus on, and both of them are by Pennsylvania natives. I love looking for native authors. The first one is Jonathan Bean. This is a kid's book. If you are embarking on traditional homeschooling, especially, I highly recommend this. It's called This Is My Home, This Is My School. It's adorable. One thing that is tough sometimes for homeschoolers, especially if you think about like someone like my son, who he's never been to public school. He's very influenced by how media portrays public school. And so oftentimes he'll say, I want to ride the bus every day. Well, we don't even live somewhere where he would ride a bus to school. But he doesn't know that because he has never experienced it. So I love when I can find homeschool movies, shows, books that give a fairly accurate portrayal instead of stereotypical of what homeschool life is about. And this book is definitely one of them. It definitely talks about just that, about integrating how your home life and your school life really can mesh together. And probably one of my favorite things, the illustrations and everything are super adorable. I love that the illustrations kind of give this impression of how chaotic a home can be. And when you are learning from home, that's the truth. We have learning materials all over our house, and so sometimes it looks a little bit messy, and that's okay. All right. And then the other one, so that's Jonathan Bean. This Is My Home, This Is My School. Love that book. We read it every year before we start, and then throughout the year too. My son likes it. The other book I have is The World is Our Classroom, How One Family Used Nature and Travel to Shape an Extraordinary Education. This book is by Cindy Ross. We had her visit and do a talk with us, a presentation, last summer. It was amazing. I love her. She's great. And this is actually very unique, especially to those of you who may still be in public school too. They did extensive traveling all over the world for sometimes weeks or even months at a time. And for a pretty big chunk of that, her kids were in public school. So she does address that and talk about it. Their different chapters are about how learning from self-propelled travel, learning from our ancestors, learning from wild animals, learning about values and priorities, learning from history. And what is very cool about being a Pennsylvania native in this case is that when she talks about learning from history, these are going to be local resources that you can take a part of right here in Pennsylvania, which is awesome. You can see I've actually highlighted quite a bit here of things that, hi Mirna, that that I want to take advantage of in the years to come. So, highly recommend The World is Our Classroom by Cindy Ross and Jonathan Bean. This is my home. This is my school. So those are my two book recommendations for this week, and I will have one or two each week moving forward relating to what I'm going to talk about. So next week, I want to see your questions. Please email them. Please leave comments for me, and potentially that's what I'll be addressing. My plan is for next week is to really talk about incorporating nature into learning. That's kind of a little bit my wheelhouse. That's sort of what we do a lot of. So I'll talk about how we do that, easy ways to do that, and some local resources that you have available to you to enhance that situation. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful to you. Again, just remember you are doing a good job. This is a difficult time, and there's no rule book. There's no specific specific blog that has taught us how to handle school during a pandemic. This is all new territory. So doing the best that you can is the best thing that you can do. That's all that we can do. And I hopefully I can give you some little tips along the way to potentially make it just a little bit easier. And if not, I hope that it just helps to hear that you are doing a great job. This is a temporary situation. We will get through this, and we'll get through it by supporting one another. All right, have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next Thursday at 10 a.m.